background is in medicine. I'm actually, even though I'm involved with manufacturing, particularly injury prevention products, most of my life I've spent doing research, teaching, and practicing in the area of critical care, ER, and intensive care medicine. I'm the chairman of Troxel. I'm not involved with operations, and I've been involved with R&D as well to some extent. And Troxel, which is the company I'm representing here, has been involved with a variety of injury prevention products over many years. It actually was founded in 1892. So obviously I didn't found that company. I thought about, with all these presentations, I thought about what might be interesting to you and useful and something you may have never heard before. So I'm going to talk a little bit about my experience working with the state of California on the Department of Health Services related to injury prevention products and how that might relate to what the equestrian world is going through. The head of marketing at Troxel said, "Well, why didn't you talk about Troxel helmets?" I think this might be very useful to all of you, and so I'm going to highlight some of that and some of the things I learned watching the injury prevention world struggle and tackle issues that are important related to injury prevention. First, I'll start with why equestrian in some ways is behind some of the other injury prevention worlds that we have. For instance, behind children's car seats, that sort of thing. And the reason for that, interestingly, relates to not just its size, but also because the injury prevention world of equestrian is mostly a private organization related. And that's why cycling helmets came first, for instance, over equestrian helmets, because most cycling injuries occur on public roads, related to cars, that sort of thing. And so the equestrian data isn't nearly as good as the cycling data in terms of its timing and extent. And you can think about that also in relation to other sorts of injury prevention issues. Some of you probably have seen the issue with cribs lately. The drop-down cribs can't be, are going to be disallowed in the United States, and the government's gotten involved. Well, that's the number of cribs, number of deaths and severe injuries related to cribs is nothing, or it's very small compared to the issue of equestrian. But the government is involved directly with that issue, and in fact, banning that. And so, interesting that equestrian, which probably was suffering somewhere between 150 and 300 deaths a year related to equestrian activities, and it's very difficult to define that number carefully because in the ER data and the state data and that sort of thing, the data was often mixed up with things like farm-based injuries, farm-based deaths, that sort of thing. So if you're sitting, for instance, in the Injury Prevention Committee for the state of California and you're trying to see just what is the rate, you might have a much better chance of for instance, car injury-related information than you would equestrian. So that's one reason people say, well, why is equestrian just getting to helmets and some other areas haven't? It's one reason why that's been true. It's been sort of out of the data collection area to some extent. And I think partly what some of the disciplines are suffering from is really good data. And not having the public health funding and the money to collect good data. A second point I want to make about some of my experience that I've seen in the past relates to if you bring in a regulation, what might happen. And I'm going to refer, I thought about that because I see the regulations coming in various paces in different aspects of the equestrian world. For instance, Troxel has quite a few helmets that are sold into the Western market. And that market is looking at issues that relate to regulation, rodeo, various segments of that market. And I want to refer back to my experience with Little League helmets. Way back in the 1980s, Little League, and actually I was the team physician for the San Diego Padres at that time. I sort of did it as a side interest of mine. And so I was involved with the Little League decision to make helmets obligatory. The main problem with the Little League at that point was they feared the fact that children, because of the cost issue and the parents' freedom issue and all sorts of other issues that I hear battered around, so to speak, in the equestrian world. The main concern was, would that affect participation and sort of enjoyment of the sport. So Little League kept pretty good data on what happened